Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a literal historical thriller. We're talking about a guy who was mocked, completely penniless, yet used pure, unadulterated brainpower to forge one of the greatest, undivided empires in human history. We're rewinding 2,300 years to the ancient Indian kingdom of Magadha to unravel the story of a mind so brilliant, top intelligence agencies still study his strategies today. Let's get right into it.
So can one man's revenge actually change the map of the world? Can a single undone hair knot lay the foundation for an entire unified subcontinent? I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. We are about to embark on a wild journey of psychological warfare, grand strategy, and the ultimate payback.
The whole thing kicks off with a super eerie prophecy. Chanakya was born in a small village to a Brahmin family, but it wasn't an ordinary birth. He was born with his front teeth already visible. Now, the kingdom's top astrologers took one look at this and turned pale. They predicted this kid was destined to be a Chakravarti Samrat, a ruler of the world. But his father was absolutely terrified this would lead his son down a path of arrogance and bloody corruption. So he makes this drastic, unthinkable choice. He breaks his infant son's teeth. The astrologers see this and immediately amend their prophecy. They realize he won't be a king himself, but he will become the ultimate kingmaker, pulling the strings from the shadows.
Now, as Chanakya grew up, he was frail, dark-skinned, and relentlessly bullied by society for his appearance. For a young kid, that kind of rejection is brutal, right? But here's the fascinating part. Instead of getting bitter and lashing out, he developed this unbreakable, absolute patience. He figured out super early that real power doesn't come from your physical body. It comes from your mind. He actually had a photographic memory. While the other scholars took weeks to memorize ancient scriptures, Chanakya mastered them in a single hearing. His intellect became an impenetrable fortress.
Eventually, he realized his home state of Magadha had devolved into this corrupt, luxury-obsessed mess. So, this frail young boy packs up and walks barefoot for thousands of miles. His target? Takshashila. Located near modern-day Rawalpindi in Pakistan, this was the ancient world's ultimate epicenter of intellect. When he gets there, he's starving, literally wearing rags, and the guards try to block him. But Chanakya boldly challenges the head teacher to a scholarly debate right then and there, and he completely stuns the entire assembly with his total mastery of politics and logic. He was admitted instantly.
While Chanakya is pouring day and night into studying the secret depths of politics and economics at Takshashila, total tragedy strikes back home. The incredibly corrupt king of Magadha, Dhanananda, throws Chanakya's father in prison. The family's wealth, their honor, all stripped away in a flash. His father is humiliated and forced into exile. And seeing his father's helpless tears, it just killed the quiet, patient student inside Chanakya. That was the exact moment a ruthless revolutionary was born. He swore absolute destruction on Magadha's dark empire.
Now, to really grasp the stakes here, we have to look at India's massive two-front geopolitical crisis at the time. Internally, you've got this cruel, greedy King Dhanananda crushing the people. But externally, Alexander the Great, the undefeated conqueror, is marching right toward the borders. And all the local Indian kings are either bowing down out of sheer terror or just fighting each other. Chanakya looked at this and realized a terrifying truth. If this fragmented nation doesn't unite into one massive, ironclad empire, they are all going to become slaves to a foreign invader.
Putting the fate of the nation way above his own personal vendetta, Chanakya actually travels back to Magadha's capital, Patalipura, to warn the king about Alexander. During a Brahmin assembly, he takes an elevated seat. Well, King Dhanananda walks in, completely drunk on the power of his 200,000-strong army, and he sees this frail, unconventional-looking scholar. The king's ego just flares up. Chanakya calmly tries to explain, "Look, I'm here to save the kingdom from the Greeks." But Dhanananda isn't having it. He literally orders his guards to kick the scholar and violently throw him out of the palace.
And during this violent struggle, Chanakya's shika comes undone. That's the traditional Brahmin hair knot, a huge symbol of honor and intellect. Thrown down the palace steps, with just fiery rage in his eyes, he delivers this terrifying climactic vow. He yells, "I will not tie this shika until I burn your arrogant dynasty to ashes." Guys, this wasn't just an empty threat. This was a death warrant, delivered by an unarmed, penniless scholar directly to the wealthiest king in the known world.
Okay, but how on earth do you destroy a massive empire when you have no army and zero money? Well, you build one from scratch. While wandering the forest, Chanakya spots a group of children playing, and one boy is sitting on a rock acting as a king, delivering justice to his friends with this incredible fearlessness. Some hunters try to scare the kids, but this boy stands his ground and declares, "No one is allowed to intimidate anyone in my kingdom."
Chanakya asks his name. The boy proudly replies, Chandragupta. Seeing this raw, multiple potential, Chanakya literally buys the boy from his family with some gold coins. He had found his ultimate weapon.
The crucial point here is how he transforms this raw clay into an invincible warrior. He takes young Chandragupta to Takshashila, and he doesn't just teach him how to swing a sword, he teaches him the courage of a lion and the absolute cunning of a fox. But he also anticipates the inevitable, assassination attempts. So secretly, Chanakya starts slipping daily microdoses of slow poison into Chandragupta's food. Slowly, methodically, he was building the boy's bodily immunity to lethal venom.
But before they could even think about taking down Magadha, they had to deal with Alexander the Great. And here is where Chanakya delivers an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare. He sends spies into the Greek camps to spread whispers that the local Indian gods are furious. Then, he actually taints the Greek drinking water with a slow-acting poison that causes painful rashes and extreme weakness days later, making the invaders truly believe it's divine wrath. At night, his spies create spooky, unearthly sounds and hang terrifying shapes in the forest canopy. Finally, he leaks exaggerated intelligence that a massive Indian army with 6,000 bloodthirsty elephants is waiting just across the river. The terror campaign worked flawlessly. Alexander's undefeated, battle-hardened army flat-out mutinied and refused to take another step.
With the Greeks retreating, Chanakya and Chandragupta hastily scrambled together a small rebel army and charged straight at the capital of Magadha. And it is a total disaster. They get absolutely crushed and are forced to hide in the forest starving. But then, one day, Chanakya overhears an old woman scolding a child. The kid had burned his hand by reaching right into the center of a hot plate of khichdi, which is a rice and lentil dish. The woman tells him, "Eat from the edges where it's cool." It was a massive light bulb moment. Chanakya realized his fatal strategic mistake. You don't attack the heavily fortified center of an empire first. You dismantle it from the edges.
To weaken those edges, Chanakya unleashed one of the most terrifying covert weapons in history, the Vishakanyas, or poison girls. These were orphaned girls who were raised from childhood on microdoses of venom. Eventually, their bodies basically became living poison. A single kiss, or even just their sweat, could be instantly lethal. Chanakya quietly dispatched these beautiful, deadly assassins into the camps of King Dhanananda's allied kings and generals, and slowly, silently from the inside out, enemy leadership just began dropping dead in their sleep.
Now they were truly ready for the siege. Chanakya constructs a brutal guerrilla army out of outcasts, rebels, and tribes who had been wronged by the king. He secures an alliance with the powerful mountain king Parvatak by promising him half the empire. When Dhanananda sends his fiercest general to crush them, Chanakya lures the enemy's war elephants onto narrow mountain paths secretly rigged with poison thorns, sparking a deadly, chaotic stampede. Finally, they rapidly encircle the impenetrable capital of Pataliputra. They cut off the food supply and flood the city with rumors, turning the king's own men against each other in sheer paranoia.
Starved out and broken from within, the capital's gates are finally thrown open by Chanakya's spies. Chandragupta's forces sweep in. King Dhanananda, who was once the richest and most arrogant ruler alive, is captured fleeing like a coward. Chanakya orders that the tyrant feel the exact same pain he inflicted on his own people. And there, standing right in front of the empty throne, Chanakya finally ties his shikha. The vow was fulfilled. But here is where his genius really shines. He actually spares Dhanananda's fiercely loyal and capable minister, Raksasa, and makes him prime minister under Chandragupta. He knew he needed brilliant administrators to keep the new kingdom stable.
Let's fast forward a bit to 305 BC. The newly forged Maurya Empire faces its next ultimate test. Alexander's former general, Seleucus Nicator, returns to finish his dead king's dream. But man, did he underestimate the disciplined, elephant-riding war machine Chanakya had built. The Greek invaders were utterly crushed. But instead of just executing Seleucus, Chanakya tells Chandragupta to turn him into an ally. He forces this historic diplomatic treaty, where Seleucus actually gives his daughter, Princess Helena, in marriage to Chandragupta, permanently locking down those vulnerable western borders.
The sheer scale of the treaty they won was just staggering. Through this single diplomatic masterstroke, the Maurya Empire gained total control of Kandahar, Kabul, Herat, and Balochistan. To put that into perspective, we're talking about vast swaths of modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. The impossible dream of a united, massive subcontinent, Akhand Bharat, was suddenly a geographical reality.
But, as always, immense power extracts a really heavy price. Remember that slow poison Chanakya was secretly feeding Chandragupta for years to make him immune? Well, it led to a heartbreaking tragedy.
One evening, Chandragupta is dining with his primary, pregnant wife, Queen Dordurha. Completely unknowingly, she eats a small morsel of food from the king's plate, food that had been laced with Chanakya's daily poison.
The poison was overwhelmingly potent. The queen collapses instantly, the venom just tearing through her bloodstream. Chanakya rushes into the room and immediately realizes she is entirely beyond saving. But the unborn heir to the entire empire is still alive inside her. So in a split-second, ruthless calculation to save the dynasty, Chanakya draws his sword and literally cuts the dying queen open to extract the baby. A single drop of poison had already reached the child's forehead, leaving a blue mark. He was named Bindusara, which literally means strength of the drop.
Decades pass. Chandragupta, grieving and totally disillusioned with worldly power, eventually abdicates the throne to become a monk, passing the crown to Bindusara. But the era of the great kingmaker was destined to end in tragedy. A fiercely jealous minister named Subandhu completely twisted the truth, whispering lies to the new king Bindusara that Chanakya had cold-bloodedly murdered his mother. Enraged, Bindusara insults his lifelong protector. Heartbroken that the very empire he bled to build now doubted his core character, the aging mastermind silently walks out into the forest, vowing to starve himself to death in self-imposed exile.
When Bindusara later learned the actual truth from an old nurse that Chanakya had actually saved his life that day, he begged for forgiveness, but Chanakya refused to come back. Meanwhile, that treacherous minister Subandhu, pretending to go make peace, heads to the forest and literally sets Chanakya's meditation hut on fire. But Chanakya, brilliant to his very last breath, had laid a final trap. He left behind this lavish chest with a note claiming it contained precious oil meant for the king. Subandhu's greed takes over, he opens it and rubs the oil all over himself. It was a vicious contact poison that instantly coagulated his blood. Subandhu literally burned alive from the inside out.
So even from the grave, Chanakya was still directing the fate of the empire. A loyal disciple delivered a final letter to Bindusara, completely exposing Subandhu's treachery and clearing Chanakya's name once and for all. But even more importantly, that letter revealed one last, brilliant secret. You see, Bindusara had a fierce, somewhat neglected young son named Ashoka. Well, Chanakya's disciples had been secretly training him in the exact same disciplines used on Chandragupta years ago. Chanakya had planted the seeds for the boy who would eventually become the legendary emperor Ashoka. Chanakya's physical form perished in that fire, but his intellect achieved true immortality. He compiled his entire life's work into monumental texts like the Arthashastra and Chanakya Nietzsche. And here is why this matters today. 2,300 years later, these exact doctrines of statecraft, economics, and psychological warfare are actively studied by top global intelligence agencies and massive corporate conglomerates. He proved definitively that an enemy can be dismantled not just by the swing of a sword, but by confusing and outmaneuvering their mind.
We're going to end this explainer with a provocative thought. If one mocked, penniless scholar, completely cast out by society, could engineer a vast empire using nothing but his sheer mental force, what limits are you placing on your own intellect?